We are now live. Thank you very much, everybody that's been waiting. We're just trying to get some things set up and ready to go. We have some really cool stuff that we're going to be showing you today. Today we are joined by Ford Digital Design Research and Development Manager Michael Smith. It's an honor to have him, and a longtime Gravity Sketch user, of course. You may have seen his work featured on our Instagram page and our other channels. So we're joined by him today, and we're just going to be taking a look at a little bit of Michael's journey, and also he's going to show us some things he's been working on lately. Just to give you a little bit of an introduction, so my name is Jaron Dorman. I'm the Design Community Manager at Gravity Sketch, and I basically just connect all of you to Gravity Sketch, and I answer your questions and everything. Whenever you're sending us messages or whatever, it's usually me answering you. It's a pleasure to talk with all of you and meet with all of you and meet amazing people like Michael and highlight just incredible designers in our community. So without further ado, I'm just going to shoot it over to Michael and if you want to introduce yourself, Michael, and just tell everybody a little bit about who you are.
Well, it all began back in 1972 when I was born. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to give you my life story. Well, you did a great job. Thanks for introducing me, and thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I think maybe the best way to start off is just to give people a little background. I think anybody that gets into automotive design and design in general has a really unique story in terms of how they got there. The Cliff's Notes version of where I went is wanted to be a designer, obviously, in high school, and thought it was a great idea. Got some suggestions from my father about having alternate career plans, or at least a backup plan. And so I went and got an engineering degree first, and then I went to CCS for design school. And I really think that sort of what would have been like a hurdle was actually a really good thing ultimately, because to have the extra knowledge and the sort of continuous fight, right brain and left brain, is actually a really good thing. And so I would say that's the quickest way to explain how I got here and why I want to do this. It's actually, and we'll get into it a little bit more maybe as we talk, right?
Yeah.
It's how you resolve the tension between making stuff and making it awesome.
Yeah, it's actually quite interesting, like that, those two things, because I always thought, and I mean, this is not a unique thought, but I always thought that industrial design, transportation design was a spectrum of people that come from sort of two areas, whether it's engineering or art. And so either you're very much engineer-minded and you were building things, creating things, but you wanted to be a little more artistic, a little more expressive, and you wanted to bring some beauty to the things that you were making. Whereas on the other end, you have artists or I just call them the artistic type people that, they know how to draw and to sketch, sculpt, whatever, but they want a little more structure. They want to actually anchor it to something into the real world. And it always seems like people come from like those two ends and land somewhere in the middle somewhere.
Yeah, I would say, maybe back in time, you could argue that there was a more binary or black and white sort of delineation between those. And I think, thankfully, our culture has matured and certainly with, the whole STEAM initiatives, and it's not STEM, it's STEAM. I got to have the A in there.
Right.
And so, STEAM initiatives and the sort of the modern mentality is very much not limiting, right? It's not, hey, you're here or you're here. It's where are you on the spectrum of that creativity and desire to, and honestly, there's a place for everybody on that spectrum. So I think it's totally fine, and I think it's actually really great, that we live in this world today that can sort of multiply the goodness about all of that, right? So you have people who really come at it from the creative side. And believe me, you work at a car company, you're going to get you're going to get more than a little bit of the realism, and that's because, right, we don't sell pretty pictures, we sell cars, right? And so And I've said it before about Gravity Sketch. I think that's where it's really interesting is that, if you have an idea in your head, the distance between that and making something tangible has now shrunk. Because if you're right getting as quickly as you can into 3D, you're not, you're sort of you're bypassing some of the trip ups and hurdles of the process.
Yeah, it's so true. I'm very obviously very early in my career and stages. I mean, I just literally graduated less than a year ago. So, and just the amount of tools available to get my idea out of here and out into the real world is just incredible. And I've had some internships, and my bosses would tell me, back when I was a designer, and we had to lay everything out, on a vellum sheets of paper, and we had to have every single angle of it. And I really appreciate those designers that come from sort of those times before the computers, before the 3D, because you really had to understand, you really had to be able to explain yourself, visually very, very clearly. And so I've heard from just professional designers and just from conversations that I've had that, even though we have all these powerful tools, I think sometimes people can think that we don't need fundamentals, or we don't need to have, some of the core things that makes design powerful or makes a design successful. Just because you have a powerful tool doesn't mean you still need to understand design, understand what looks good, what's nice. But the powerful tool allows you to maybe get there quicker, or get through more ideas, get through more concepts, or something like that.
That's the challenge, I think, of any creative tool that's I would say digital in nature, right? Is that it's got to get out of your way, and in some respects, right? It has to
Yeah.
it has to enable you, and then also be invisible in the end, right? Because
Yeah.
if you can point to something and go, and there's been flavors of this all throughout time, and you could even point back to, when cars were hand hammered over wooden forms, right? There was an aesthetic to that, right? Or there's things that you could get away with, and then there was advancements in tooling, and I can get away with more, and there's advancements in tooling, and so it's sort of that underlying architecture, or the underlying how you got there. You sort of want that to be not an obstacle that you have to jump over in your creative
Right.
work, and I think, I mean, you want to talk about fundamentals. I had this strange moment when I was making one of the cars I put up recently on Instagram. Was just a sketchy car. Well, I really went back to my roots. I drew a sketch of the car in VR, and don't judge me. In VR on the 2D using planer tool. I drew it on a 2D plane in space, and I'm just thinking, what am I doing? But then to understand where I used the revolve tool to make a cylinder, and I rotated the cylinder until it matched my ellipse. And I'm thinking,
Okay.
that's the way you teach ellipses to kids. Don't have them
Yeah.
draw ellipses. The computer can do that for you.
Right.
Understand that that's why it looks the way it does.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really powerful. Yeah, it's there's been some interesting discoveries like that, I think, in this 3D VR sketching sort of atmosphere, this tool that sort of what really matters at these fundamental levels. I remember being in school drawing. Our entire studio was just ellipses, just like consistently ellipses, and then lines, dot line, and that's good to do those things. But yeah, I mean, you're so right, and about what really is the essence of what we're trying. What's the essence of the lesson there? And yeah, it totally makes sense.
I'll give you another anecdote real quick.
Yeah,
and
go
that is,
ahead.
there's these, and I had a strange moment as well where I was working on a car in VR, and then a lot of times in design you want to sit with your design, you want to let it soak, you want to sort of let it breathe, and come back to it and see, is this feeling okay or not. And the next morning I'm eating breakfast with my kids, and piece of paper and a crayon, and I just started drawing it, and I would argue, and I may be out of my mind, but I would argue that I drew that better than if I hadn't done it was something where I could draw that on paper better than if I'd have just started from paper, because I'd already flipped that car around in front of me,
Yeah.
in space in front of me, and I sort of knew the lines a little bit better, and I think that's really powerful. And I'm trying to figure out how to tap that, and tap into that sort of energy of uh, of knowing your sketch. And I think we'll get into that later when we jump into
Yeah.
VR with what we're going to talk about. Um, but yeah, this idea of I really see designing in VR as creative meditation.
Mm.
People talk about flow state, and I find it as relaxing and fun as sketching ought to be.
Yeah. I
And I
would,
think
yeah.
when we talk about digital tools and things like that,
Mhm.
if it's not fun, you shouldn't be using that tool, right? The tool should
Yeah.
be fun to use, because then that gets you into that flow state or that meditative state of just getting right. It sort of releases all the impediments to getting your ideas out.
That's such a good point. I mean, I've noticed that as well. I've started using Gravity Sketch maybe 4 years ago. And as soon as I tried it, actually one of the senior students at the time showed it to me, and as soon as I jumped in, I was like, "This is amazing." And then as I spent more time in it, I couldn't. I lost track of time. I just it was almost like sketching on paper, where you spend forever on sketches, and you look at the clock and it's been 6 hours,
Yep.
and it's really quite incredible because I've never had that experience with a digital tool before. They've all been just grueling. I'm wondering like how much more work is this going to take to get this thing that I've sketched into this 3D model, um, and so to have Gravity Sketch come along, it was just pivotal. And I guess that makes me I just want to ask you something. I know there's probably other people wondering this too. You are in the automotive industry. How do you see? I just would love to get your opinion. How do you see tools like Gravity Sketch, VR? Obviously, the intention of Gravity Sketch is not to replace CAD at all. But how do you see it juxtaposed with the Alias sort of tradition of modeling and surface modeling, that's just been so embedded within the industry for so long?
Sure. I mean, I think where I see it at the moment is definitely, again, if you want to talk about a bandwidth or a spectrum, if you want to say it's now the process, right? If you want to talk about process, that's a dreaded word, but we don't sell 2D pictures of cars, we sell 3D cars.
Right.
And so in that spectrum of going from an idea to a tangible product, quite literally, we're always looking for things that can take chunks of time out of that process.
Mm-hmm.
And so if there's a tool that's available that can slot in, and Gravity Sketch easily slots in on the front end with creative stuff, and speaking selfishly, I guess I've been trying to push and show Gravity Sketch for taking it way to the other end of that line, right? To say how far can you take it, surfacing and melding engineering elements, and just doing as much as you can in that creative space.
Yeah.
And I think the maturity of the tool. I mean, I'm the guy that gets to sort of be really happy to say that it was 2016 when I first played with Gravity Sketch. That's 4 years ago now.
Wow.
But the maturity of the tool and how fast it's ramped up is crazy time to me, right? And I think that the crew and Daniel and all those guys there, that whole team is doing a great job of maturing the tool as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And I think in doing that, it sort of takes bigger and bigger chunks, going this way towards production, and quite honestly, going the other way towards empathy for your customer. I mean, the amount of empathy that I can gain by building a scenario or an environment and then designing the vehicle into that, or designing the vehicle and then creating the environment that it might live in. I mean, there's so much power in that to use more of that design thinking, which is kind of a very modern phrase now, to use that methodology. Again, those tools that help us do that better. That's helpful for us.
It makes sense. I mean, whatever it does gets the job done quickest, fastest, but also allows you to be creative. I think that's probably one of the amazing things about it. And the point of these interviews isn't always just to praise Gravity Sketch and everything, but sometimes you just get in that mode, right? I just want to say that it's another amazing thing about it is that you really can get quite far with your designs, with your ideas, if you spend enough time. But also, it's so loose and creative just in the very beginning. You don't have to. You're not bogged down by just all these functions, all these tools. It's just open, it's a blank canvas. And some people are sort of feel daunted about a blank canvas at first. But if you have an idea, a concept, and you start making sort of 3D forms and shapes, I would argue we're so, as humans, just familiar with the 3D world, obviously, that we interact with, that you just immediately get in there and you're like, oh, actually, I want that to be over here. And then pretty soon, hours later, you've got this sort of finely tuned thing that you've created in 3D without a million, mouse clicks, that you might have needed to get there with a traditional tool.
Yep. And now, if you, again, not to get too nerdy, but like in terms of spatial and visual, and the sort of cross flow of that, again, it's really hard to. It's not hard. It's easy to sell people on VR, and you can't have them stare at a screen. So I mean, in terms of getting the word out, is you got to get the headset on, right? And it's that sort of when you're in it, then you get it. Staring at a 2D screen or watching somebody do VR isn't as impactful as jumping in it. And also this idea of I recreated my basement, right, to the decimal place inches, because I'm in America. I didn't do it in metric, but and made a mock-up of it because I want to redo my basement to make a home office.
Oh wow.
And then to go downstairs in its current state, it feels different to me. I don't know how to tell you this, but to having smashed the basement down to something that I can check the lighting and where the light's going to come in the window with the flashlight tool, and then zooming down to 100% scale. Now when I walk around, things the space feels different to me because I've been there in a different way. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I added furniture and I added a counter, I added a kitchenette and all this stuff that isn't there yet. I don't know how to explain
that.
That's
incredible. That's a really interesting experience because you become so familiar with something in VR, and then you're there in real life. You're like, hey, where's all the stuff that I thought was here? But
yeah, it's a bummer because I can't just snap my fingers and make it appear.
Yeah.
I would say when you said one word that we forgot to mention is collaborative, because truly,
yeah.
When I think the auto industry is kind of unfortunately known with this phrase of throw it over the wall, or that's not my silo, or whatever, and I think anything that helps you do something more creatively, faster, and more collaboratively is going to help you win in the business. And so that's where and we can talk more about CoSketch, but I mean, I think CoSketch is quite literally the thing that's going to flip the script on a lot of stuff that we do, and that's because it makes it so much easier to have conversations that typically would be sort of walled off or segmented. I'm not going to talk to you about that yet. Well, no, let's have that conversation now, so we don't have to have an argument later.
Right.
It's stuff like that that's really going to be wild.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And we're going to see just a one-to-one example of that. And I just want to mention, I probably should have mentioned this in the beginning. If anybody's watching and they want to ask questions during the live, please feel free. I'll try and shoot those questions over to Michael, or I'll try and answer them if they're Gravity Sketch related. But just wanted to throw that out there as well. Well, yeah, it's so true on all of that, Michael, and it's just been amazing. I just want to say on a personal level, seeing what you've done in Gravity Sketch as a result of your exploration and your learnings, and it's been inspirational to see just like how far you've taken it, and I think we're about to see as well just how much farther you're taking things as well, and this is an ongoing project, I believe, something you're still working on. but thankful that you're open to sharing it now. So, or at least the in process of it. But let's see. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna actually switch into VR, and we've got that set up. Michael, if you're ready, we can just go ahead and switch over to that if you like.
Yeah, I'm going to turn my controllers on so it wakes up.
All right.
I'm going to switch my audio real quick here.
Sure thing. Okay. Thank you for bearing with me, everyone. Just trying to transition the video feed here. Okay.
I probably should use the banana to move around.
Okay. And I'm in, and everybody can see inside the hangar now. So
welcome to my hangar.
Good. Yeah, this is beautiful. I'll just kind of take a little bit of I'll zoom out here so people can kind of see. And Michael will explain a little bit more in a minute here, but.
Well, I mean, the easy way to talk about this is, car people and plane people seem to coalesce, and certainly cars and aviation share a similar sort of history of innovation. For me, it's personal and professional and all that good stuff. And I think, when you see like a Monterey Historics and a Monterey Jet Center, place where airplanes and cars are shown together, that was sort of the inspiration. I decided to make my own style hangar, and I had already modeled a Airbus 220 Neo, I think is what it is, it's a 220 Neo, and I wanted a place to park it. So this hangar fits when the ring light is up at the top of the ceiling. It fits nicely. It has a couple feet to spare.
Wow, that's cool.
And it's got offices for, you and I when we want to look down at the. Actually, I think there is some furniture. Oh, no, there's no furniture, but there's. Let me see if I can get that layer. Oh, it's all in one layer. I have. I mean, I don't know yet if I have plans for putting offices and things like that, but it is a fun place to shoot camera shots in Blender.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. I can't wait to see some renderings of this with lighting and everything to see just the scale of this in a sort of a realistic scenario. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think. Yeah, I mean, it. I can tell you, it does look cooler in Blender, and that's just because shiny materials make everything look better. And things like. Ambient occlusion and real-time reflection and all that stuff. It just.
I mean, even now it looks cool. Don't get me wrong. I mean, just the sheer scale. If I just put myself at full scale, I'm using the banana to teleport myself here. But yeah, I mean, right now it's as if I'm standing in a full-sized hangar, which is incredible. And you actually look. I mean, the car looks like it's actually like 100 feet away, which is amazing. But yeah,
it might be 100 feet away.
What's that?
I'm trying to remember the wingspan of the Airbus, but this this building is hundreds of feet wide.
So what was your inspiration for this hangar? Were some references that you were maybe pulling from? Did you just go online and try and
find some just a few things you liked, some different hangers that you enjoyed, or was it something more specific?
Well, I wouldn't put this to the scrutiny of an architect just yet.
Okay.
I did what I thought was my due diligence in terms of the green elements are I-beam, and steel. I mean, I am weird enough that I pulled reference for things like what does an HVAC look like in a hangar? What is the fire suppression, which is all those those crazy red things up at the ceiling.
Yeah.
Spit out foam. It's things that what I wanted to do was grab everything that I could that felt real and was realistic to a hangar, and then go a little further, right? So the lighting elements for indirect, I haven't necessarily seen those, but I thought it would look cool like that, right? To have instead of just row upon row of fluorescence, to do something a little different. The ring light is straight up, make cars look cool in renderings.
Yeah.
Right, because you can bring it down
yeah.
low, and you park the car on the turntable in the center. There's no hangar that really has a turntable that I can recall, but but things like exit signs and door handles,
Yeah.
and, whatever it takes to make it feel and be real. I pull reference from old hangars and new hangars. It's I'd love for there to be more modern hangars, and I don't know if mine necessarily qualifies as super modern, but.
Well, it looks very convincing. I mean, so that's what I was wondering if you had some. What's that?
That's a good word, convincing. If it can be convincing, then you've won half the battle.
Yeah.
It's like putting junction boxes and conduit. And lighting, and the piping for the water suppression system.
Yeah.
And indirect heating and whatever it takes. It's just time. And again, that sort of time warp effect of VR, you find yourself doing crazy stuff like those little cones over there. But those are something that you would find in a real hangar, right? They put them on the wingtips, and they put them anywhere you might bump your head.
Yeah.
And ask me how I know this. Well, it's because I worked at an FBO, and I had to clean hangars with the little mini Zamboni.
Wow.
And so there's this sort of again, that personal connection, and that I think is what drives me in everything that I do to strive for that level of convincing.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I mean, it certainly does that, and that's really interesting that you actually, you worked in hangars. So, I mean, you have a first-hand understanding of what it should feel like, what it should look like, sort of you could say the essence of a hangar.
I think the hangar I worked in, 2 of them could probably fit inside this hangar.
Really?
This is on a much bigger scale. We didn't service jet, airliners. We serviced more general aviation type stuff up through business jets, but that's it.
Yeah, would you say like a hangar like this would be probably a very large commercial jet hangar, probably?
Yeah, again, the Airbus, the 220neo is maybe one of their smaller jets, but it's quite big, so it's definitely passenger jets size.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, this is incredible.
If I build any bigger planes, I'll have to modify the hangar, but that's okay.
Well, I also clarify. You kind of touched on it a little bit ago, but some people might be wondering, why all the different colors? And I think I know the answer, but I think I'll let you go ahead and answer that.
Yeah, so that's workflow. It's way easier to when you export into things like Sketchfab or even into Blender, having different materials or things grouped by common material, and then it's via color in Gravity Sketch. I know the same hexagonal light elements that are indirect is going to glow the same as my ring light because it's the same material. I can assign an emissive shader to it, and instantly I've saved myself a ton of selection work.
Yeah. So it's a. Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, no, it's funny that you bring it up because it's one of the things it's been a hurdle in some ways in getting people to, when you get into Gravity Sketch. There was a criticism raised one time, the colors look really cartoony, and that's because how I'm modeling it. So I help myself, right, to get it
Right.
into my, out of my brain and into the state of
Yeah.
tangibleness, and
Mhm.
then get it out of here into something that. And again, to be clear, I don't necessarily need Gravity Sketch to be a full-on render engine, right? Its strengths lie elsewhere, and so these are the things that I have to do. It sounds kind
Yeah.
of apologetic, but I like my crazy colors.
Yeah, no, it's great, and
I
we've
challenge people. I say, "Come at me, bro. We're in VR. You can't hurt me in VR."
Well, we've seen, we've seen this workflow. A number of other people have used. For example, Finish Taylor. He's a designer, I think, for Adidas or Puma. I'm apologies, Finrush, if you're listening. I can't quite remember, but he's done a similar thing with his shoe designs, where he adds just different wacky colors to each sort of a piece of fabric on the shoe, just so it's easily distinguishable which piece is a different piece of fabric. So it's very logical, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I discovered that Sketchfab has 100 material limit, and the airplane, which the RV I can pull in later, like completely obliterated that limit, and so I had to come back in and consolidate materials inside Gravity Sketch to even get it to jump on the Sketchfab. But that's mostly on me again, because I'm literally making green and then slightly darker green and then a darker green with a little bit of blue added, and I'm now always just sort of fragmenting as part of my workflow, which is maybe not the best way to do it. But
well, that's the way I've done it. I don't know if it's the best way either, but it makes a lot of sense and saves tons of time. Well, I just want to ask you too. I think you mentioned offices. Would that go behind the doors? Because I did notice there's other back behind those doors. There's another sort of compartment to the hangar. Is that where the offices would go?
Well, the offices would be up in the blue glassed area.
Oh, okay.
The restrooms would be along this area down here.
That's very cool.
And stuff like that. Like there's usually offices or areas for the maintenance guys.
Yeah.
And then the double doors is access to whatever office space or whatever is behind that. I do have in the sort of arcing section of the whole front piece of the hangar, there's these open areas, and that's where the tugs would go, and the fuel trucks and stuff like that.
Wow, I did not realize those blue panels would be glass. That's really cool. I'm like envisioning that as transparent. That's cool.
If I ungroup this and actually, I can turn the opacity down. That's how in the default scene, it's the opacity is turned down, so you can actually see there's a dude standing up on the catwalk there.
That's cool. I'm gonna see if I can just go over here, look inside. Oh yeah, that's cool.
Right, and in fact, like I keep thinking, am I giving these people enough space? Well, that is a huge space.
Yeah,
so everything about the scale of this building is a little bit. It's more manageable when when you have it in the palm of your hands.
Right.
Again, that's kind of where that sort of malleability of scale again is what continues to bend my brain of being able to squish this thing down to quite literally sitting in the palm of my hands and then zoom back down to 100%. It's just the best.
Well, the beauty of this too is that it's kind of seems like to me it's your dream hangar. Like it's like everything that you want, size wise, function wise. It's kind of like you can make it whatever you want. I need to ask you something, just technical question. You have some really, everything's very nicely, orderly laid out. We were using a lot of grid function in Gravity Sketch to lay things out, as well as just like the repeating arch of the fire safety panels. How was that done?
Yeah, that's a lot of axis alignment tool, right? The functionality of lining up your controllers.
Yeah.
And also the array snap feature that's now in Gravity Sketch, where I can create the offset that I want, and I think actually I don't actually think it's not perfectly symmetrical, right? But the first two vertical supports are the same offset.
Okay.
And then I made, everything about this is, if you're going to make it once, you're going to just copy it and slide it down,
Yeah.
because that's literally what they're going to do in real life, right? They're not going to make a custom
Right.
truss support for each one of these. It's just going to be the same thing
Yeah.
times 8 or whatever it is. So yeah, it's just a lot of axis constrained movement.
That makes a lot of sense, because I personally have been interested in a little bit more trying out some more methodical, measured sort of ways of working Gravity Sketch. So it just it looked very precise, and so I was just curious about what your workflow was. But that makes a lot of sense. Well, without any further delay here, we've got a covered up car over here.
What's that? I did a really bad job. I literally did this in like.
No, this is great. This is perfect.
Before the session started, because we can make it like a reveal. Maybe if I start to delete, it's gonna dynamically show things if I start deleting stuff, right?
Oh, that's right. Nice.
So I'm just slowly. See, this is a new style of reveal that you can't do with cloth.
This is awesome.
A subdivision reveal.
You're seeing it here first, everyone.
Yeah, so I'm just going to delete it. That's going to take too long. So you want to talk about soak time. This car has been in the works for the longest of any project that I've been working on. And it's because it's the one that I want to get the most right. And
Wow.
you
It looks
in
amazing.
terms of like the Zora thing that I did and how many iterations I went through converting that from the initial sketchy model to the sub-D refined, that went through 5, I think, major iterations. This thing is on a different time scale.
Yeah.
And it's in a way it's the most fun, right? Because there's I think what I'm flirting with on this one is this idea of craftsmanship. And again, it's not a negative to say that sketchy is too quick, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's that sometimes the longer I've lived with this thing, the better it's gotten. And so as long as I keep that trend going,
Yeah.
And it doesn't sort of go backwards, then I'm going to be happy, and
Yeah.
it will have been fun. And I think the best thing for our viewers to understand is that I've never drawn any of these curves on this model in a orthographic at all. Every
Yeah.
curve on this car has been drawn in 3D and then checked in 3D. I could just give you a real quick.
Not even 2D sketches, right?
No 2D sketches. Yep, this is all. I could show you the origination scene had the sketchy model here, and I slid that forward, and I said I'm gonna try another one, and I have another one back here, and so there's even 2 different versions of this initial sketch of this car, and so it's kind of crazy. But
Yeah.
for example, this line right there is a line that I would challenge you to try and get right from the side view.
Yeah.
The line that results in the side view is because I drew this line in 3D.
Right.
And in fact, it even I'm gonna break the. Let me see if I can quickly throw some of this stuff on a layer, just so I can expose a little bit of the interior.
Yeah.
Because you see that stuff links up, right? It's all. I'm on an invisible layer now. It's because I made my layer. Right, all the stuff
Wow.
links up, right? It all
Yeah.
relates, and you want to talk about, spatial awareness and what we do as designers. This is where all the magic is, right? Is getting stuff to live well, and fit a package, right? And fit people. And if you poke your head in, there's a frame in there in the back, which is just tubes at this point, but that may grow into.
Oh yeah.
Something more exotic, and again,
Wow.
I think this one is the most labor of love kind of project. And the interior sketch was the first thing I did after I picked the winner of the 3 initial gesture sketches.
Wow.
And so if you want to sit in here with me, we can go 100%.
Yeah, right.
I'll be the driver. But just, the things that, the things that matter, it's all here, and the outside matters too, right? But just this idea of, and I'm being repetitious because I've said this all before, but I mean, it just bears repeating. This is where people spend their time.
Yeah.
You hook them, you get them in by the outside, but then you want to make sure where they live is great too. And so that's why I started on the interior first before I even continued with the exterior.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's to make it a Bugatti, right? Make it look really authentic. And I can draw this because Ford doesn't compete in the market segment of Bugatti.
Right.
And just keep it fun. I mean, this is whip, big time whip.
Yeah, I love this. I can see what you're talking about. About everything connecting, and it makes so much sense because when you're sketching cars, there's on paper, it's just you have to do a million little sketches just to see how things connect and how things flow into each other. Whereas you're solving all of that in this one work in progress model. One sketch essentially that you're adding on and editing consistently.
I didn't like where that mirror was, so I just moved it.
Okay, yeah, but yeah, I mean, just the flow. I just love, well, and also the design is just really cool. I mean, the center console here is would this be some kind of screen or?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, and it moves up and down depending on the driving mode and
that's cool.
How frisky you're getting with top speed records and such.
Wow. And so forgive me for not knowing some of the nuances here, but it looks like there's sort of a display as well here, or an opportunity for the passenger to have some sort of information displayed as well, or?
I hadn't done that, but I like your idea, so I think you should start sketching in what you want to see there as a willing passenger in an ultra exotic like this.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure, but it's just, I love the symmetry of it. It's just
be a grab handle.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say the words because they're not safe for YouTube, but
yeah. No, but go ahead.
No, keep going.
Well, I was just going to say that I just love the symmetry of it, and what's surprising too, because I had seen Bugattis for a while, and then I went to the Detroit Auto Show a couple of years ago, and saw one for the first time in front of my eyes, and I was very surprised at how small they were. And they always look so large, in images because of the large voluminous shapes. I think make it seem large, but it's actually a very small vehicle.
Yep, and this is on package and on par with the vehicles that they currently sell.
Yeah.
In terms of wheelbase, track. I have some ideas for power plants that are decidedly on Bugatti, but maybe that's where the brand needs to be challenged.
Well, it certainly it looks like a Bugatti. I mean, obviously you've spent so much time on it, but it just when I first saw it before we started the live, and I just looked at it and it's like, yep, that's Bugatti. I could totally see Bugatti making something like that, but not now. Like, it definitely seems like it looks like an evolution for sure. Like, it looks like the next step of Bugatti, which is obviously, like, the goal of every designer is, what's the future of Ford? What's the Ford of 2030, 2040? What does that design language look like?
Fun.
Yeah,
you gotta have fun, and I mean, I hope everything I do should look like I'm having fun.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, then I'm not doing it right.
Yeah, and just looking at this interior, there's so many. You got blue lines, green lines. Sort of. You can see the thought process, and that's just another thing. And not to get too nerdy, but it's just you can see how someone's thinking and what someone is maybe playing with. And so me as as a director can come in and just look and say, okay, I can see what you're thinking here. Maybe we could maybe we should go with that, or maybe if we just brought this up just slightly, or accentuated this curve a little more. But you have that one-to-one, and you were saying that earlier, but it's just a perfect example of literally stepping into someone's mind almost.
Yep, and totally. I'm glad you mentioned the colors, because it's not just about, differentiating one line to the other, but there's temporal aspects, right? So
Okay.
the less saturated the line, the older it is, right? So
Huh.
the gray was probably the original, and then blue, and then green is kind
Wow.
of the crazier colors. And those are getting more and more honed in on the direction that I think I want to go.
Wow.
And so to your point, right, and this is kind of a riddle, and I've talked about this with students these days, is as we get into this sort of bold, digitized future, and VR is going to certainly play a part in that, is how do you keep track of, or how do you archive this as a thought process? And in Gravity Sketch, it's on layers, right? And thanks for making unlimited layers, because now I can just put all these colored lines on layers and be able to say, iteration 1, iteration 2, or week 1, or week 2, week 3, whatever.
Yeah.
Or day 1, hour 1, who knows, right? It's whatever time scale you're going to work on.
Yeah.
And even then extending that out there to, and certainly from where I came from, a year or so ago, before this position I'm in now, right, of recruiting, I can't wait to quite literally, you're an employee of Gravity Sketch, so I can't have a job interview with you, but I fully look forward to the day where this is the job interview that I'm going to have with
Absolutely.
a job candidate.
That is, that's something I never really actually haven't thought of until you mentioned that. But it's so true that you could literally just sit virtually and just say, and just show, hey, this is what I'm working on. This is what I was thinking when I was doing this.
Yep.
And
I look forward to that day.
that is, yeah. I mean, how close do you think? I mean, how soon of a day do you think that is?
Within a week.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. It's. I mean, but it makes total sense, especially from a designer's perspective, recruiting perspective. Yeah.
Well, and again, it's so funny because I have a lot of these. I've been having all these amazing conversations with, Brian in footwear, and that turned into my new pal from Australia, Bezo, who we talked a lot about in co-sketch. A lot of wild stuff. He's an architect guy, and so he's going to actually give me a critique on another house project that I did. It's a dream house, kind of a if I won the lottery, which there's pictures of it on Instagram. But it's going to be fun to have him sort of tear my house design apart because I'm not an architect, right? And really be able to, and hopefully in some ways defend my choices, but also hear and improve it, right? And so in the same way, we've already taken advantage of co-sketch and VR for internships where it's way more interactive and it's way more, I would say, productive, right? To be able to get your hands dirty without literally getting your hands dirty.
Yeah.
Messy in a sketch, right? Before you get too far along. And the riddle that I've had these conversations with various people on co-sketch is, how do you replace the sketchbook? Because when we're hiring people, man, still love sketchbooks, right? Because that is quite literally the best way to kind of see how people think, right?
Yeah.
It's can you turn a car around in your head, and can you then get that on paper? Well, what's the new equivalent, right? what's going to be and I would argue that it's this, right? You're in 3D. We're going to make 3D cars eventually. I want to see how you can do with 3D stuff, right?
Yeah. That makes sense.
Anyway, that's my personal opinion.
No, it makes sense, and I've thought about, this has been a subject of discussion in school, when I was in school, and just talking about sketching versus 3D, and, we were really, and you see, as you know, from Matt Whitby, working with him, that, VR and Gravity Sketch was very much part of the curriculum, and there was, I think, a constant sort of, at least on the student side of things, how much am I sketching and how much am I just jumping into Gravity Sketch and just and just spending most of my time there, and just having 3D line sketches in VR. And so at the end of the day, if it communicates, I think the conclusion that we all came to was, at the end of the day, if it's communicating our concept and it's in 3D, I mean, then that's even better. So it's just like it's doing what ultimately 2D sketching historically was supposed to do, which is communicate your idea in 3D. But now, obviously, everything we've been saying, it's just the next evolution.
Still can go back and forth, right? I
Yeah.
mean, there's the do a doodle, a 3D doodle, then draw it at the breakfast table, and I made refinements to it that I then added back to it's completely backwards to the concept, right? Or I've done ones where I've done the full car, and then I finished with the renderings in 2D because I get it. I live in a realistic world where people sort of expect you to have stuff up on the wall. That's fine. It doesn't it fits within that entire ecosystem of creativity.
Well, let me ask you something.
I think that should be not intimidating, right? I think that should be emboldening to people to just get into it, just try it.
Yeah.
See where it fits in your process. If you are the person who likes to just take it to this far, awesome. That's all you need to do.
Yeah.
Just take it as far as you want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it just kind of makes me think of something, and I'm curious to get your thoughts. Do you think that there's a stigma of using VR in the automotive industry? And I think it probably translates to other industries as well. But just out of your own personal experience, because you mentioned people still like to see 2D sketches, which I love 2D sketches. I mean, they're pretty to look at, right? But you did say earlier that we don't manufacture pretty images. We manufacture cars, 3D cars, and so. Is there a stigma, do you think, to VR and this whole new sort of tool that's emerging?
I would say if there's any stigma, and I'm trying to think if stigma is too harsh of a word. I would think stigma might have applied before March of this year. It certainly is, not too surprising to hear that COVID-19 has really drastically altered lots of different landscapes.
Right.
And I would say because of the inevitable shift, right, and the way we're finding successes in virtualizing more of our process, it's the stigma, if any, is crumbling.
Yeah. I would agree.
I would say if there's any sort of stigma, it's just that sometimes people see new as risky, and then there's other who see opportunity. And I think it depends on what your mindset is. I'm certainly the mindset when I saw the first video that Gravity Sketch put up on YouTube, I said, I got to play with that. And the next day I emailed Shay and Daniela, and they said, let's have at it.
Wow.
And that's been crazy roller coaster ride to here until now.
Yeah.
And it's going to just keep going as far as I can tell.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, you mentioned some landmarks there, COVID-19 obviously, and I think the Quest has definitely piqued a lot of more people's interests in VR in general. But it makes a lot of sense. Well,
just one
go
with
ahead.
that, right? Because you mentioned it, right? Is there's a lift, right? A lift of computer and hardware, software in some cases.
Yeah.
And I think what Quest represents is this the lowering of that lift, right? Because it's this untethered HMD. You just pop it on your head, and now you're off to the races.
Yeah.
And I certainly love the idea of hopefully when we get back to traveling around and talking to our customers in different events, to have that on an airplane, because now the bosses love that too, right? Because you can keep being creative right now, because the security is inside your headset, right? Versus you can't work on a laptop, and sketching in an airport is not really condoned.
Yeah.
But that little pivot, right, of, well, now the creativity is next to my eyeballs. Again, it's a chance to rewrite the script. And I think, if COVID is any silver linings coming out of this, is let's take everything we've learned and really thoughtfully change the way we do things.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And we actually saw, funny enough, someone tagged us in their story on Instagram, and they were literally sitting in an airplane using the Quest, doing some sketching. And there's a, it's just it's as soon as someone does that, then it breaks the barrier. Everybody's like, all right, we can do it on airplanes, and it's just like people realize, it's anywhere. You can be anywhere and do this.
And I think if there's any sort of company level stigma, it breaks down as societal acceptance gets bigger too, right? So the sort of acceptance of Quest and the broadening of people's VR horizons with a product like that, it's only going to help to sort of lower that any perceived barrier. And yeah, I feel weird thinking, if I bring the Quest to swim class, is that going to be, what are people going to think of me? And then a lot of times what I tell people is, look, we're in VR. I have no idea what people are looking at me, or I could care less, right? Because I'm having fun.
Right.
And I think that's what you always have to go back to. As soon as it's not fun.
Absolutely. And what's funny is, just to kind of maybe tie it back to sketching, I felt that same way whenever I'd be in the zone sketching on a piece of paper. I just kind of would zone out my environment. And it's, with VR, obviously you're covered up, so you can't really look around, but I think it just further reinforces that focus mode that we were talking about earlier as well. That you just in your own, you're just in your world of creativity, and you're making things, and everybody will see, hopefully at one point what you've been up to. Well, we've been so I know that you have some other stuff that you've also wanted to show as well.
Let's see if we can pull the airplane in, because that's a completely different mode of transportation.
Yeah. I just know people would love to see that as well, and you had it in here earlier when we were getting prepped, and it just was so cool.
Let me lock that layer so I don't delete the hanger. Or is that on the same layer? Yeah, it is. I just want to delete this because of the part count.
Yeah.
Right, and I think it'll help the loading of this airplane, because I went a little crazy on buttons and also using the text tool, and that has a tendency to it's a lot of polygons when you make text. And it's called RV. So continuing with the theme of I'm just going to make sure.
And just so everybody watching as well, we're going to link Michael's social media as well in the description of this video. So if you want to see more of his work, you can check him out on Instagram. Is that where you're primarily active, is Instagram, or do you have other places as well that you'd like people to go to?
There's a pretty lively group on Facebook. Gravity Sketch Artists, I think, is another place that I'm frequently around. I'm gonna stop talking when I click this, because I don't want any potential lag spike to.
Sure. Yep. Someone says in the comments, I've definitely had more conversations about my VR use over the last 6 months as Facebook has made VR more mainstream. So that's really interesting. Oh, it looks like it's coming in now. So.
Yeah, apologies for the.
No, it's fine.
This is not a simple model. In fact, it's underground. Let's move that up.
Yeah, beautiful.
It's a little bit nose low here, so let me tilt the nose gear back. Let me tilt it back. There, now it looks like it's on a let's see, do I still have the... Yes, I have that layer, so I can put that onto that layer.
Wow.
Actually, we could do it as a slightly transparent. Yeah, so this thing, I love planes too, as well as cars. And if you want to talk about continuing the theme of dreams, right? This is a dream airplane.
Yeah.
This is a Vans RV-10. I'm going to delete these because I have these crazy polygons here. They're oh man, it just moved them. This is a reflective surface when I take it into Blender because it's not a right. It's a digital screen, and I can sort of give it a glowy effect.
Yeah.
But if you want to talk precision, I mean this is, I'm going to say, I haven't seen any other 3D model of an RV-10 that's this dimensionally accurate.
Wow.
And it's down to, these are the actual, there's an avionics company that makes this, and when you have good reference, you can make good models. And so these are the actual screens, right? It's all dimensionally correct. The only stuff that's unique is the stuff, because the RV-10 is a kit plane, and you build it in different sections, and things that you have creative control over are stuff like the layout of the instrument panel.
Yeah.
There's companies that do custom radio and switch areas, right? That actually, this will all be one piece.
Yeah.
And then the throttle control and the engine controls are, it can all be customized. And so where I could, I went and did custom. So the seat trim and the two-piece clamshell seat and the overhead with the lights and
oh wow,
it's
yeah.
just a tremendous amount of fun. Again, it's
Yeah.
If you zoom in here, you can see I'm cheeky as well, right? That there's realistic low fuel, master caution, battery merge.
Oh,
and
nice.
an eject button that you have in this plane because you don't want to eject in this plane.
Right.
But
wow.
in terms of, what is this good for? This is good because I can get my wife into VR and I can have her sit in this plane and say, wouldn't you like to have this plane to fly, you, me, and the kids around the country?
It's a selling tool.
It's a sales tool, exactly. Yeah. And then, because I want her to have a realistic experience, I'm the guy that puts the static wicks, out here on the wingtips, have the actual, they have a little bit of droop to them because gravity is a force that we have to contend with. And
wow. Down to the last detail.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
I'm a little bit crazy. You can check, there's actually LED lights here in the wingtips.
Yeah, wow.
And again, so the wingtip, so from this cut line outboard is you can do whatever you want, right? It's the stuff that's inboard of that you can't mess with because that's all strictly aerodynamics. Well,
right.
I sat here and said, well, I like the look of the wingtip on a Diamond DA40, and I like the look of the lights that they have on a Cirrus SR22, so I smashed those together.
That's awesome.
It's kind of a hybrid lighting scenario and wingtip, right?
Yeah, it looks so cool.
I've yet to get this into a wind tunnel, but my hope is that it's going to give me a little bit extra cruising airspeed.
I mean, it looks. I mean, just visually, it looks very aerodynamic. It's awesome. I love it. I think that light. I was going to comment that the lights looked really cool, integrated into that sort of that swoosh shape. But I mean, I'm just amazed at the detail of this. I mean, I saw this on Instagram when you posted it, but and of course the renders are great, and you get really into the details and show the interior. But just until you get in VR and just really start looking around, it's amazing. And you were kind of touching on it earlier, but the customizability of these planes is what was one of the main motivations that you had for taking on this project, right? Because you knew that every piece you could control. This you could somewhat in real life have a version of this.
Yep.
In real life.
Yep.
Yeah.
Indeed.
And which is just awesome because it's a validation. It's complete one-to-one 100% validation of what you could do, and and basically see it for yourself, and be like, "Yep, that's what I want." And then obviously the next step is to make the move and
it's the
get
same
the thing.
thing,
But
I have my fingers crossed, right? That it's the same effect as the basement. It's the same effect that
Right.
we anticipate, and we're trusting is going to happen with the cars that we do. It's this, you've lived with it before you live with it.
yeah, exactly.
That's
Yeah,
what it's all about, right? It's, and we haven't even sort of gotten into this idea of, when I put on my HMD and I want to do something design-wise for somebody else, I'm in fact gaining empathy for them just by virtue of putting the HMD on, because I'm now experiencing this object through the eyes of the customer
right.
in a way that is completely different than sketching on a piece of paper.
Yeah, the empathy. Yeah, that's another good point. Is the empathy aspect, and just in understanding, one to one, what's going on basically. Let's see. We had a few comments too. I wanted to see what people are saying here. Calvin Kim says you should make your dream house too in VR using Gravity Sketch when you have time.
So if you check out my Instagram, you'll see I've already started it. It's somewhere on the coast of Oregon. I took a screenshot from Google Earth of a straight down, and then I used that. I wrapped that onto a texture onto a subdivision surface.
Wow.
And morphed it and added points and made it into topography.
Wow.
Best as I could guess, right, for what this actual coastline of Oregon looks like.
Uh-huh.
And then I was like, okay, now I got to build my house here. And then it's a two-stage. It's got like 2 levels. It has it's bonkers. It's
Wow.
And it's all 1-to-1. And
Wow.
I can't wait to report back, my progress with Bezo, who again is an architect, and he's gonna give me some. I think he's gonna pull me back and bring the reins in to say, this is obviously the work of a creative, over creative mind, right, in terms of what you can get away with. But it's the same thing of, kids when they just start sketching cars, right? There's, have at it, have fun, and when it's time, you'll have the level of realism added to your skill set, right? You'll need to get a little bit more realistic. And at this point, I'm just a newbie, wannabe architect until I gain additional knowledge. I can share with you, I had my first session designing a shoe with Brian Rinella from Reebok. And holy moly, I learned so much in that session. Not only the semantics and the terminology, but just to have him, as I'm moving stuff, he's like, I don't know about that, or you might want to consider moving this. It was completely mind-bending, right?
Wow.
I'm not a shoe guy, right?
Right.
But I had a sketch that I did many years ago, and we're going to have a go at it, right? And I'm going to learn a lot, and then the thing that we're going to do together in co-sketch is going to be a result of that. And it's going to combine both of our brains. It's going to be absolutely wild.
Well, that's something cool too to mention. You mentioned your collaboration and working with Brian, and we released recently sort of a call that we had with you a few weeks back, maybe a month. I can't remember when it was, but it was fairly recent, and we have that on our YouTube channel. So if anybody wants to check that out as well, we'll just go ahead and link that in the description. So if you want to check that out and see. Hear the story of Michael and Brian working together. It's a really, really cool story as well. But that's such a cool thing, working with someone that's an expertise in another field and learning just the ins and outs and the terminology, as you say, the lingo. It just further broadens your repertoire and design and being able to express yourself in more ways. And I'm sure you learned. Even from shoes, things you could probably translate into automotive as well, ways of thinking
and if the person that made the comment about the dream house, once I go my couple rounds of boxing with Bezo, and we clean up my design, maybe he and I should get in a co-sketch session and he can tour the house.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hear that, Calvin Kim. That's an open invitation. So. And actually, that brings up something too. If if you're ever interested, I mean, it would be cool to have like a live sketch session with you as well on our sketch live sketch Wednesdays. Obviously, whenever it fits your schedule, but it would be super cool to have the community learn a little bit about how to approach a vehicle design as well. And that was I know that's something I've been thinking about. I haven't actually brought it up, but we can maybe do that in the future as well. But again, that's another example of why I think this co-creation is so powerful, is that you can have these cross-platform, cross-expertise experiences. Somebody can come in as a shoe designer, you yourself as an automotive designer, and see what happens. Extremely powerful. Let's see, there's someone else here. Let's see. And then I think the same person, Calvin Kim, says, "Stay tuned with my channel. I'm making the new Bronco in extreme detail version. Hope you get to see it, Mr. Smith." So,
cool.
Yeah, well, that's cool too. I can't wait to see that as well. Let's see. Okay, John35 says, "Does he make this only using reference images? Because the details are amazing." So I guess they're asking how you executed this model, Gravity Sketch.
Yeah, so I tend to make a reference room, right, of, if I'm going to make an airplane, the style in which I made it is different than I might do a car, right? Because a car, I've done cars just from a front three-quarter, I've done cars from side views, it doesn't matter, right? So it sort of absorbs any technique. To do something dimensionally accurate like an airplane and to really get it right, I guess it would be considered more box modeling, right, of having lots of orthographics.
Okay.
And it was all available from vans, and
Wow.
in fact, the aspect of this being a kit plane, right, is that there are many people who are currently in the process of making one of these airplanes, and if you want detail pictures, it's all there for you, right? There's so many people who document, and you can read their build logs down and details down to the rivets, you know what I mean? And
Wow.
in terms of like knowing this airplane, having created this object, is to have done the research for, how this thing, this is typically what people build first, right? Is this or the vertical stabilizer?
Yeah.
And how it's all riveted together, and this is all aluminum, and then there's this collar of fiberglass that goes around it, and it's screwed in. Well, that's why there's screws there, right? And so,
Wow.
the detail is all emergent from the process that this plane is, the processes used to make this plane. But yeah, a lot of orthographics and a lot of pictorial reference. Again, there's a wealth of it in the world in terms of this type of airplane, because there are people making tons of these all the time.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, it's always easier when you have just a wealth of evidence or reference like that. That way, there's not much left to interpretation. And then the beauty is that when you have all the reference, then you can interpret it, or change it to your tastes.
Yep.
As you've been
in the
talking.
sense of knowing where you can and where you can't change it.
Right.
And that's, again, the examples of the seats, the rudder pedals. They sell a bunch of different styles of rudder pedals. It's really fun. The control stick. There's guys that put, like full-on fighter pilot style controls on the yoke. It's not a yoke, it's the control stick.
Yeah.
And again, it's like each one is different, right? And that's what makes them cool.
Yeah, exactly.
They're different but the same, right? I mean, they have the same bones.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look these up, because I actually wasn't familiar with these airplanes before I started talking to you about it. But I've also been into planes throughout my life, just as a sort of externally, like I'm not an expert, but my grandfathers were in the Air Force, and so I think hearing their stories, talking about their their times flying around the world, and just talking about their favorite planes and everything, it just got me super. I love the world of flying and the flight and just these machines that are very beautiful but completely driven by engineering, and functional pieces of art, and just looking at this plane and getting into the details. It's just, you really appreciate, as you've already kind of mentioned, just what it takes to put something like this together and what makes these things work.
And I would say, airplanes is kind of a nice thing to be enamored with, right? In terms of where this is all going, and that is, as we get towards full BEV and a BEV strategy, battery electric vehicle. Sorry, I'm not trying to use acronyms. When you go battery electric, right?
Yeah.
The things you need to worry about are aerodynamics and weight.
Right.
Well, guess what's been worrying about aerodynamics and weight forever?
Yeah.
So to know these things, right, to know these objects is only going to help you in terms of your, the pool of reference that you can draw on in your brain. The more stuff you grab, and I think that's, again, to sort of keep swimming in this circle of Co-Sketch allows you to bring different voices into the conversation. People who come up through design school who have different backgrounds, again, a personal experience there. And there's other ones who the mashup was design and marketing, design and business, design and whatever. That sort of mashup is that's not something to be scoffed at. It's to be celebrated.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that we've discussed internally is co-creation and just like the kinds of conversations that will be had, because obviously co-creation was an evolution to just allowing more designers to come into VR, but I think quickly we realized, and through obviously your experiences, is like, what if a marketing person comes in and starts looking at this stuff? Someone on the business side of things, on the sales side of things, everyone, it's just a space. Everyone can contribute some angle of knowledge to what's being talked about, and it's absolutely just big ditto to everything you're saying there.
Now that I have this model, if I grouped it together, we could fit how many RV10s? We could count how many RV10s we could fit in this hangar.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
Trivia poll.
Probably a lot.
Whoever gets closest to the guess.
Yeah, everyone guess. How many RV10s could you fit inside of this hangar? Let's see. Oh, James Robbins says, thanks you for the tour of your models. Really great stuff, as always.
James and I, he's another guy who's been here a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's if
check out James's stuff. He's got a ton of stuff if you want to get into gravity.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, he's got some great tutorials on YouTube and workflows on if you ever want to learn how to make vehicles in VR Gravity Sketch. Well, we are getting. Sorry, go ahead.
On that note,
yeah.
Bezo, the guy from Australia who I co-sketched with, he's the one from Discord that inspired me to to consider what could I add to the community, and it's going to manifest itself likely in some YouTube videos and tutorials and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, that'll be excellent.
I'm not going to tread on the ground. I'm going to stand on the shoulder of the James Robbins giants, right? And if you want to learn, go to his stuff and learn that. And I'm going to see if I can add in different pieces in different places. In terms of what I know and what I've done and what I can help.
Absolutely.
The community.
I can't wait to see stuff like that coming from you as well. I mean, I've admired your work as well, and just like obviously you have tremendous experience. So I think everybody in the community will love that. So yeah, I think that's awesome. Well, I know we've gone a little bit over time here, but I think it's been jam-packed with just very insightful sort of knowledge and discussion, and obviously some amazing work from from Michael. And so, Michael, if there's, I know you've been dropping a lot of knowledge, I think, during this call, but if there's any parting advice you would give to designers or artists watching that you've learned that you would like to give, and if anything comes to mind, it can be anything that you've learned or anything that's really stuck with you in your career.
Well, I mean, it's going to sound really cheesy and easy to say, but always be learning.
Yeah.
I'm not a young guy anymore, but man, this is like a bit of a fountain of youth for me. Is to always be jumping into something new, and in terms of, in terms of my personal and professional life, right, it's been crazy, and so it's always be learning, and then always be on the lookout for what could be next.
Awesome.
And how to smash together different softwares, right? I mean, I've very recently just started getting back into Blender, and it's just bending my brain. What you can do.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you knew your output, you wanted to do a 360 turntable.
Mm-hmm.
So now I know exactly how I need to go to take this hanger and this plane, get it into Blender and do an animation. It's all because of the videos that are available on YouTube and online. The resources out there are tremendous. So I would say the sort of, if you're stuck at home, which unfortunately we kind of all are in the United States, take advantage of that time, right? Go find some other tool, right? Find something that's brand new and push it to its limits, right?
Yeah.
The day that I started playing with Gravity Sketch was unfortunately the day that I stopped playing with Tilt Brush, but it's because the amount of potential that I saw in this particular software was beyond what I knew Tilt Brush was going to be able to give me.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of keeping your eyes out for, how to keep expanding the state space, right, or the potential space for what you can do with your creativity.
Yeah, well, that's very good, and I wouldn't say that's cheesy at all, and I would even argue that cheesy's good. So, yeah, I mean, always learning. That's a great piece of advice, and I mean, we're always learning, and so yeah, thank you. Well, thank you very much, Michael, for your time and for showing everyone the amazing stuff you're working on and sharing your experience, your thought process. I know that's been very insightful and eye-opening for myself and people watching. So.
You're most welcome.
Yeah.
You're very welcome.
And
time flies when you're having fun, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I totally kind of lost track time, but yeah, so thank you. And also thank you, everybody that's been watching. If you missed any part of this in the beginning, you can rewind now, or just as soon as it's over, you'll be able to watch the live as soon as it's finished. So make sure to tune in on Thursdays. We do interviews with people from the community, and so we're just really glad to have Michael Smith today, and yeah, thank you very much for joining. Oh yeah, he's pulling some parts off of this model here. That's super cool. Yeah. Wow, you can see all the inner workings there too. Let's see. Wow. Yeah, that's cool. It's awesome, like an exploded view. Well, yeah, I just want to thank everybody again, and you, if you want to follow Michael, his stuff is on our description of this live. You can find him on Instagram as well as the Facebook Gravity Sketch Artist Group, and but we will see you and have a great rest of your week. Bye bye now.
Thanks, everybody.